Welcome to another episode of Crossover Sports Talk. I'm your host, Fazil Rashad, and founder, your home for all hoops and NFL things. Once again, we're going to dive into the NBA Wild this offseason so far with the free agency moves and the coaching carousel that's going on, with a lot of blockbuster moves that's going on, lots of signings with the frenzy that's going on from the start right after the NBA Finals. So we're going to get under all these moves and signings. So sit back, grab your drink, and we'll get into the 2025 NBA free agency moves, including the coaching carousels and many more. All right. I hope you guys are all doing pretty good. Everyone's having a good had a good weekend in the past. It's been about another week since the pod came on. We'll be having more, as I explained in the past. So we'll be having more and more guests and more sponsors and more things that's going to be going around. I hope you guys are all getting ready for the nice 4th of July weekend that's coming up with the long 3-day weekend. Hopefully you guys, have all things all ready and planned to go. But, we'll dive into things with the NBA and what's going on right now. I'll start with the first, move right now with Oklahoma City Thunder, winning their NBA championship and gaining their first title with Oklahoma City since they moved from Seattle to Oklahoma City. They signed Shai Gilgeous-Alexander to a 4-year deal with worth $285 million, which is about $71 million per season. So that's almost $1 million per game. There's 82 games in one NBA season. So that's going to be almost he's going to be making nearly $1 million per game check, which is, my God, like mind-boggling. Like, imagine how the, with the cap, and the market rate that everything's going, including, as you see in the NFL, with how quarterbacks are getting paid, how much Cooper Flag or Victor Wembanyama is going to get in like the next 5-10 years. We might have like the first 100 million per season player, which is going to be absolutely, something to see, which is going to, break records, which would be crazy that we've never seen before. So, kudos to Shai. He's had a great season. One of the best seasons of all time, I would like to say. MVP, Finals MVP, Western Conference Finals MVP, including winning the NBA scoring title and leading his team to ultimately the NBA title. So, people are going to be gunning for them next year. Obviously you'd want to lock them up. They re-signed, Jalen Williams as well. Not J-Dubs, but Jalen Williams, another one that comes from the bench, to another deal. So, they like his camaraderie and his, his relationship with the team, how he boosts, he builds, and how he's going to be built around that team, with Oklahoma City. Also another move that was pretty interesting was, a lot of buzz going around with the Milwaukee Bucks with Miles Turner eventually signing a 4-year, $107 million deal with the Milwaukee Bucks, as that was just after, the Bucks just waived Damian Lillard, which he just came off, just had recently, like 2.5 months ago, a torn Achilles in that first round against the Indiana Pacers, which eventually they lost in 5 games. So they waived him, they released him, and now he's on the open market. Damian Lillard, the sharpshooter, great point guard. He's from the Bay Area and from Oakland, California. There's many teams that, are going to be available for him, possibly the Heat, Warriors possibly being in the mix, hometown team. We shall see what goes on with him. So I don't know if Lillard's going to end up staying in the East. He could be moving back out west, but it really depends. But he's going to have some suitors. I don't know if he's going to be playing all of next season, like along with Tatum and Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton. So these are players with ruptured and torn Achilles. It takes quite some time to get back, but they're all superstars and elite players, which they can do at a high level. And another deal would be, Trey Jones. He just re-signed with the Bulls. He's a good defender. 3-year, $24 million deal. He's not really much flashy, you would want to say, but he's very efficient and he's a good defender and he's improving his shot, as well. He's kind of like a steady floor general. And then also another interesting move was for the D'Angelo Russell going to Dallas, building up with Cooper Flag, which was the number 1 overall pick. for the Dallas Mavericks, winning the lottery with, pairing him with Anthony Davis. There's Klay Thompson there. And then, Kyrie Irving also had that ACL that was torn, this past this season. So he might take some time to come back next season, but Dallas is pretty big and they're pretty deep team. They can look pretty dangerous next season. The West is very loaded, man. Like I would like to say, like they are just stacked over there. It's like legit, maybe 1 to 11 teams, I would say, that can possibly just compete in the West, So they did sign him for a 2-year, $12 million deal, could be for insurance, for Kyrie Irving or backup. They can possibly play together, see what Jason Kidd does with that rotation when Kyrie Irving eventually comes back. But, D'Lo can probably hold the fort maybe with the unit and like the players that he's going to have around him, especially the stardom that's there. So hopefully if they stay healthy, they can be dangerous, including, with Chicago, with Trey Jones, seeing how they're just rebuilding over there with their team and what they got going down there. So I don't know what they're going to do with Kobe White, with, Josh Giddey that's there. So it's going to be pretty interesting. And also Gershon Yabusele that's going to the Knicks. And the Knicks also just today, this morning, hired Mike Brown as their coach, who's the former Sacramento Kings coach, was also the former assistant of the Golden State Warriors, a 4-time champ. He also coached LeBron James and Cavaliers in that first stint. So Mike Brown has tons of experience. He did help turn around that culture in Sacramento, made them into a playoff team, 3 seed. They're possibly going to be on the up and coming, but eventually, he did have his flaws as a coach. Eventually, caught up to him, in Sacramento, but he's a great coach, and New York has a great roster. They have a great team, and they're trying to compete in the East to go to the finals and compete for a title, which they got really close this year. And they can definitely do it with, Coach Mike Brown over there, which there was some other candidates that were available, possibly like Michael Malone that Denver let go. That could have been a good fit there, but they eventually got their guy in Mike Brown. So watch out for the Knicks, I would say. And then, it's also interesting with the Lakers, the Lakers and the Warriors. Kevon Looney did go reunite back with Jordan Poole on a 2-year deal. I think it was worth about $16 million. And they played both on the Warriors together. So they're back in Washington. He's in the Washington Wizards. No, New Orleans Pelicans, I would say. No, it was my apologies. It was New Orleans Pelicans because Jordan Poole just got traded over there, and then Kevon Looney just signed over there. So, from that championship team, they won together in 22 was Jordan Poole and Kevon Looney with the Warriors. So they reunite over there. And then also what's interesting, what's going on with the Lakers. The Lakers made some moves. Dorian Finney-Smith opted out, and then he eventually signed with the Houston Rockets on a 3-year deal with his 3-and-D, his presence that's there. So also they traded for Kevin Durant. They did give Dylan Brooks and what else they gave? They gave someone Jalen Green, a young 23-year-old Jalen Green, and Dylan Brooks going over to the Phoenix Suns, along with the 5 second-round picks and the 10th overall pick, the first-round pick that went eventually to the Phoenix Suns. So Kevin Durant now goes to Houston, which Houston we were talking about needed that fourth quarter closer with that scorer. They do get Kevin Durant, which should probably uplift them, as title contenders being for there, including they added Dorian Finney-Smith and then Clint Capella, also another big along to go with Alperen Sengun. So the Houstons have got a very lengthy, athletic, defending, and now they got some scorers with them. So they're going to be pretty dangerous in the West, along with Oklahoma City and the rest of the other teams that I mentioned. So this is going to be a very jam-packed Western Conference. So I would say be ready. The Lakers also did add DeAndre Ayton today on a 2-year deal, which was with the 2nd-year option that he's going to get. So this was, I think, a low-risk move for the Lakers, but if DeAndre Ayton is a good scorer, people saying like his liability defensively, but the Lakers were really good defensively. Even after that Luka trade, they got better. So, and Luka has been in the gym recently, like he looks good, slim. So the Lakers were desperately needing a big, so they did get a scoring big, which I do think they're going to try to go get more 3-and-D players, maybe some more wing players, along with another rim protector to try to go in also for them, including to compete in the West, in that jam-packed West. And then Spencer Dinwiddie also went over to the Hornets, the Charlotte Hornets, on a 1-year deal to go against with LaMelo Ball and, try to be that veteran scorer that he is. He's been around with Dallas, with the Lakers and the Brooklyn Nets of the world. So he's been pretty reliable, especially when it comes to postseason time too. And then Dante Exum also returned to Dallas on a 1-year deal. He could be a great backup as well. He's been good, pretty solid for them in the past. And then Trendon Watford also went to the Sixers. So, they get that big grabber, get fresh legs up in there on the front court. He's young. He's got a pretty big upside. So we shall see. So that's been some pretty big moves that's been going on. I do like also what the Atlanta Hawks have been doing. They did add a shooter, and they did add also another big. They added Kristaps Porzingis in a trade with the Celtics. So Trae Young does have a big. They did add some defense as well, and so this should be a pretty good team. I was also looking about them in the West. They were a play-in team. They haven't been back to the Eastern Conference in a pretty long time, since 2021, when they got eliminated against the Milwaukee Bucks, which was the eventual NBA champions. So Atlanta's going to be trying to be there to make some moves and try to see what they could do in this upcoming season, because they've been trying to getting all over the place. Trae Young, were they going to talk about him getting traded possibly? So he did recruit, and then there was also rumors of him recruiting Luke Kennard and Nickeil Alexander-Walker away from Minnesota, which was a pretty big loss for the Wolves. It's not going to lie. He could score. He could shoot the three. He could score inside. He's pretty crafty, and Luke Kennard's a good shooter. And then they did add that big in Kristaps Porzingis. So I would also look at the Hawks up, gearing up in the Eastern Conference. So this should be pretty good. All right. So now I also want to mention a sponsor right here, as you see in the ticker below. Blaise Stanfield-Ellison. He is a realtor at Intero Real Estate. You can reach out to him with Berkshire Hathaway affiliate. They specialize in residential real estate across the Bay Area, help clients buy and sell and invest with confidence, care, and local expertise. So reach out to my guy Blaise if you're also looking for any homes or to buy or sell up here in the Bay Area. So please reach out to him. And then, as well as, I'm going to be reaching out to more and more sponsors and more people that's going to be going on throughout the way that people that come on. So we'll have more and more people come on. But there have been many moves that has been going on right now in the NBA. It's free agency season. They go pretty quick. The NBA draft also comes and happens right after the NBA finals. So things move pretty quick with GMs and people that go on throughout the season with the NBA, because it moves pretty fast. Their off seasons are pretty short and pretty steady. So their GMs, their scouts, they're already scouting. They're getting ready for the big trades and for the big signings that goes on. So it's pretty hectic for them. Not as well as like the NFL offseason, where they end in January, February, and then they don't start till September. So like they do have their free agency in March, a month after the Super Bowl, and then they have the NFL draft after a month, and they got mini camp, OTAs, and then training camp, which is all like that separates from like May, June, and then they don't come back after another month till July. Then preseason, training camp, August, and then the NFL season starts in the first week, I'd say, of September usually. So they have a pretty long offseason compared to the NBA, which moves pretty quick like you're seeing right now. Another big thing I would like to see is, or people would like to see, is like, what are the Warriors going to do? Like the Lakers have made a move. There have been the Rockets, the Thunder. There have been other teams that made a move. The Warriors did lose on Kevon Looney. So are they going to go get a big? Possibly a Giannis Antetokounmpo. or what are we gonna expect to see from there? Are they gonna have the assets to go and trade for him or try to go get another big? There was potential rumors of Al Horford, that 39-year-old out of Boston with the experience there that he's been. Also, he's played with the Hawks. He's been in the leagues for quite some time now. He's an NBA champion in 2024 with the Boston Celtics. He can shoot the three. He's good in the perimeter, and he can also rim protect and defend and get some boards. So should be pretty interesting for what goes on with Al Horford and the Warriors. I was seeing rumors of that, but I don't know if they're eventually going to sign. We should see in the next day or two, possibly the next week. Well, NBA free agency is pretty, unpredictable. We can expect many other things that could happen. And then also another team that I would like to mention would be the Los Angeles Clippers. They're interesting. They added Brook Lopez, on another 2-year deal. And then they re-signed James Harden, which he opted back out and then signed back in with the Los Angeles Clippers. So the Clippers are adding some depth. Zubac is still there to go along with the Brook Lopez, who can, rim protect, defend, and shoot the three. So, the Clippers will be dangerous in the West too as well. There's a lot of, oh my God, like if you were talking about the Western Conference, it's a bloodbath over there. It could be any of them coming out of the West. I don't have a clear-cut favorite. Obviously, there's the champs in the Oklahoma City Thunder, but we should see what goes on with the Western Conference in the coming season. The Eastern Conference is pretty much, I would say, right now, as of, Boston did losing out on Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, potentially Al Horford, and Derek White too. Jason Tatum's got that torn Achilles, so they may take a step back, I would say. They do draft well. They do many good things. Jaylen Brown and, the boy, Peyton Pritchard of all the worlds, they're still all there. Joe Mazzulla is still the coach. But, the East just have the Knicks to just beat them in the second round. The Pacers that lost Halliburton, they do lose Miles Turner, in the offseason. There's the Detroit Pistons. There's, Miami Heat on the upcoming, possibly the Atlanta Hawks. There's many, many teams that's, we probably don't have a fight in for who can possibly come out of the East. So the NBA is pretty much open. Now, you really, really wouldn't have a clear-cut favorite other than Oklahoma City potentially coming out of the West again in the Western Conference. But there's going to be many, many more moves to be made. It's just the beginning of July, so it's only July 2nd today. So we have a long 3.5 months ahead until the NBA season begins. Eventually, it's not going to feel that long, but, they do have summer league and training camp that comes up, but we shall see what goes on. It's going to be pretty interesting. Also, I would like to mention another sponsor right here, as you see down below, Mohammed Shiraan, LawPro Legal Services, Evictions, Disputes, 3-day and 30-day notices, residential, commercial, mobile home parks. You can call them at 916-709-5518. That's once again 916-709-5518. It's Mshiraan at yahoo.com. You can right there in the ticker below. So please reach out to him if you have any LawPro suggested needs. You can also please reach out to him if you need any needs. And then I also wanted to mention, Blaise's phone number I have in there below. I'll write it in the ticker below for you guys if you wanted to reach out to him for any needs. So moving forward, guys, well, with the NBA, it's going to be crazy. We're going to be expecting a lot more moves. These head coaching moves, as you saw, and David Adelman, right? Rick Adelman's son is also going to be returning as the head coach of the Denver Nuggets. And I forgot about them. I forgot to mention that, man. Joker and the Nuggets. They did add Bruce Brown back, and they did also trade for Jonas Valanciunas from the Kings. So they got some depth for Jokic, and then they did bring back a championship piece for them that was on the team of that 2022-2023 Denver Nuggets championship, which was Bruce Brown. So they're trying to build over there. They did have Aaron Gordon with that hamstring injury in that Game 7. They possibly could have potentially beat the eventual champion, which was the Oklahoma City Thunder. But the Denver Nuggets are a team to really, you can never sleep on them. They did eventually lose in 7 to Oklahoma City. The year before that, which everyone also expected them to come out of the West, they did lose to the Minnesota Timberwolves in 7 on their home court. So, it's all when it comes down to playoff basketball, like it's always all about the matchups, and then who you match up with. It's there's talent, but you can foul a little bit harder. The bumps and the bruises and all that. It's different. Playoff basketball is very different from regular season ball. A lot of people, they get that thing. Like who would have expected, Cleveland to get bounced in the second round? But that's what happens. You fall asleep for 1 second or one game or a few games here and there. You can be eliminated in a heartbeat. That's just the reality of sports, man. It can humble you real quick. Just in the NFL, where we can have this team on paper look so good, and then they can just eventually walk into a team that they didn't expect to lose against. They just go and they get their tails whooped. Because there's schematics, there's coaching advantages, there's matchups, there's so many things that go into a game where we can't expect what can go on from each team. But that's the beauty of sports. You never know what could happen, and you never know who can eventually become a champion, a star, or whatever, who can lead their team past to victory. So it's pretty crazy, man. Like we can expect like this team can win. Why didn't they win? Where this happened, but that happened. There's so many factors that have to go right too, right? You'd love to keep your teams healthy. You'd love to keep your teams all together and everything and all that. So it's pretty crazy of what goes on in the NFL. But eventually, what I think is going to go on, in the NBA, we're going to be expecting more moves. We're going to be expecting more moves from like the Warriors. We might see more moves from the Lakers. There's potential more moves for more trades and more offseason moves with free agency. There's plenty other good players still remaining to be signed. I don't know what splash we could see. Where possibly could Giannis Antetokounmpo end up? He is possibly X Factor because he did send out a tweet, and then it was also on his Instagram story that he didn't know exactly what was going on when the Bucks released Damian Lillard. He was shook by that. So who knows? Can Giannis be on the move? How much is he going to cost? Where could he end up? So everyone's saying like, oh my God, pair him with Steph. But like, yeah, that could happen. But then the Warriors, what are they going to have to give up? What are the first round picks, second round picks? What is the costs going to be for Giannis Antetokounmpo? NBA champion, Finals MVP, 2-time regular season MVP, 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. He's still in his prime right now. He did carry the Bucks to like the 5 seed in the East. I would say, even with all that's going on with the injuries around him. So it's gonna be something to see. There's gonna be many more moves to come and see, but I'm really excited to see what can go on in the NBA. So like it's been more like we don't have like a clear cut champion like we always would expect throughout the year. So we don't have that usually. And there's also right there, I just wanted to mention, there is Blaise's phone number right below. It's 510-364-7083. Please reach out to him. He's a great guy. He can help you with your real estate needs. All right. And then also I did want to mention another sponsor, which would be Geancarlo and Zeena Carmona. Licensed financial professionals helping individuals and families, build their wealth, build their generational wealth. You can eliminate debt and protect their future. There's Zeena's phone number, Zeena's email right below. It's zeenayassine063@gmail.com. You can reach out to them for your needs, and they will help you with anything that you need for financial help. Great people, they can get out to your needs and anything possible. Also, guys, I just wanted to move forward. We'll be wrapping up the show pretty soon right now. I just also wanted to thank you guys for tuning in, watching the show. We're going to be having more sponsors. We're going to be having more guests on aboard. I really appreciate all you guys for taking your time out. I'll have more videos wrapping up the show right now. I really appreciate you guys. Everyone, you guys all take care. I'll have my next guest on soon. Really appreciate everything. guys take care. All right. Bye-bye.